Welcome back to Around the 412. I'm Tyler, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Smitty. We have our new channels on Spotify, Apple, Pocket Cast, multiple different podcast platforms that you can go follow us on, and we have our own YouTube channel that Smitty, Drew, and Joe live stream every week for the Fantasy Football Show, as well as we're posting up our full shows on YouTube and posting YouTube Shorts now, which is a thing. So we're going to be uploading to that. So go subscribe on YouTube, go subscribe everywhere else you can follow us. Also, if you want to go check out the pin tweet on our Twitter or go to GoFundMe.com directly, we are in year 5 of our Rocking Around the 412 Christmas fundraiser, where Smitty and I and all of you who donate try to raise some money to be able to bring Christmases that Smitty and I had the luxury of enjoying our whole lives, and some kids nowadays don't have the same luxury that we had. And so we tried to raise money and get them gifts, toys, makeup, electronics, and we also provide a gift card to the parents to provide a Christmas meal. So if you want to donate to that or learn about our mission for that, you can go to the pin tweet on our Twitter, and as well as GoFundMe.com directly, and you can search Rocking Around the 412, or I think it's Rockin without the G.
It's rocking, yeah.
Rockin. And also, as many Steeler fans probably saw from the past weekend, there was a tragic accident that happened. Someone that Smitty and I knew, and Smitty actually went to school with, passed away at the Steeler game. But we just wanted to highlight something that came out of that. Was another GoFundMe that we're going to be talking about. It's called Isla Keene's Future. Isla was Dalton Keene's daughter, his 2-year-old daughter, and I didn't know Dalton very well. I'd only hung out with him a few times, but I've learned from the past few days that Dalton really loved his daughter and wanted the best for her, and he loved his family and he loved his friends. And so we just wanted to highlight that. It'll be in the link in our show descriptions, and it'll be the link in YouTube. And we've also retweeted it a few times on our Twitter. And we'll tweet it out again. But we just wanted to highlight that. You could also go to GoFundMe.com directly, and if you search Isla Keene's Future, that's ISLAKEANE''S Future, it'll pop up, and you can help donate to provide for a future for Isla, because she's without her dad now.
I don't even know what I'm going to say right now. I'm glad that you're the one that said that, because I don't think I would have been able to make it through it. As many of you know, like going to Central Valley, we were a merged school. So when I was going to Monaca and learned that we were merging with Center, became Central Valley, Dalton was one of the first friends that I made from the new district that was created, him and his brother Cody. Since graduating, I'd probably only seen him a handful of times. Honestly, that's just the way things go sometimes. But when we would see each other, it would be like, no time had gone past at all. We would just pick back up with the conversation. The one thing that had really changed, though, was what you just mentioned, is he was now a father. And I tweeted this out, but I find comfort in the fact that our last two conversations, the last two times that we were able to sit down and have a conversation, all he talked about was his daughter. And knowing that that was his entire world and that's what our final conversations were about, I find some comfort in knowing that, and seeing what he had become as a person and as a father, and knowing how much love he had for that little girl. And to tie the two things together that we were just talking about, Isla is going to be somebody that we take care of for Rocking Around the 412, we decided. So very thankful that we're going to be able to do that. Thankful to you guys in advance that we're going to be able to do that. But yeah, I think that Dalton, like, just to share a few words, like, I feel like every high school has their own Dalton. So one of those people that is just like a chameleon, if you will. He just got along with every friend, like every group of people that you can imagine, the jocks, the band kids, the outcat. Like, it really didn't matter who you were. You had a friend in Dalton. And that's why when they would throw their famous bonfires on a Friday or Saturday night, you might see the entire school there because everybody was invited. So that was the type of person Dalton was in high school. And then to see him transform into the father that he was for Isla, yeah, he was a good person. And I know that that's a very cliche thing to say when someone passes away, but he truly was. I haven't met somebody in my life that could say a bad thing about him. So that GoFundMe is up. We've retweeted a couple tweets, including it. We're going to put it in the description of this. We will tweet it out again. I've shared it on my Instagram story. But yeah, please keep, Cody, Savannah, his entire family in your thoughts and prayers. And let's try to talk about sports.
All right. I don't know how we're going to do that in a. All right, let's just move on. I don't know how to segue this, so let's just
listen. Yeah. We talk about it all the time, but there is really no way to all of a sudden just flip that switch and be able to talk about sports, because they're so meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And it's almost like it's scary for me to think of. I've thought about it so many times, thinking about the fact that I was at that same game, where that happened on Sunday, and just thinking about that. But yeah, I mean, I know that he wouldn't want people sitting here not being able to move on with their lives. And I know that he would also want support for his entire family moving forward. So that's what we're going to try to do.
All right. So again, no idea how to transition this, but we're going to talk about sports. So I guess the first thing that we can bring up is the Pirates season is over. It ended today is the day we're recording this, which is Wednesday, the 5th. They did end up losing 100 games, 62 and 100 on the dot, which means Smitty owes Doran Dickerson $100 exactly, because I mean I guess they didn't lose you more money by going over it, but they hit it right on the nose, so you have to give them at least $100.
Right. Yeah. So Doran Dickerson and I made a bet before the season that they wouldn't lose 100 games because they haven't lost back-to-back. They haven't had back-to-back 100-loss seasons since the 50s, I believe. So, and they were on a 100-loss pace in 2020 as well, but obviously the shortened season prevented that. Yeah. So you think about how historically bad you have to be, but the Pirates were able to do it. So yeah, they finished 62 and 100. And it's so weird because in my mind, the reason that I thought it wouldn't happen this year is because I thought that they would get better as the season went on with all these young players coming up and thinking once we got past the point of them manipulating the service time, they'd be a better baseball team. They were actually worse in the second half.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to say.
That's just the way it works, I guess. But our boy Donnie Football tweeted out, do we think that the Pirates are going to match 100 game or 62 wins, or are they going to go over or under? And I quoted the tweet and I said, to me, I'm hammering that over for the reason being, like you just mentioned, it is hard to go 100 losses back to back. But it's even harder. It's hard to do it once, but it's even harder to do it 4 times in a row if you're including that 2020 season with the 100-game loss pace.
Yeah.
So 4 seasons in a row of 100 loss pace, I'm not banking on that. I will think that maybe a full season of O'Neal Cruz and a healthy Cabrian Hayes and all these other factors that will play into it. But I would guess that they're going to be at least a little better next season. They're not going to reach 100 losses. Now, are they going to be good by any means? Heck no. That we already know they're not going to be good. But I don't think they're going to be quite as bad as they were this year.
Yeah, we'll see if it holds true. Jason Mackey was saying that he expects the Pirates to spend $20 to $30 million in free agency. That's not a high amount when you think about it, in the grand scheme of things with what other teams are going to be thrown around.
But that's one contract on the Yankees or Dodgers.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But for the Pirates to do that, I mean, they might actually bring in somebody that could contribute next year, more than just a reclamation project. Yeah. No, but I will say, just to kind of wrap things up here, they played pretty decent baseball these last couple series to even only have 100 losses, because it looked like it was gonna be 105 to 107. Miguel Andujar, I thought, had a really nice showing once coming over. O'Neal Cruz finished the season pretty strong. He was starting to draw some walks, which was nice to see. Brian Reynolds finished strong. I look at what some of the pitchers did, like Luis Ortiz going forward. I think he's all of a sudden a name to keep an eye on. Rodolfo Castro had a really nice September. I don't think that he necessarily had the best couple series here to wrap up. But to me, the big question mark is like going into next season, what's Ke'Bryan Hayes' health going to be? Because that back was obviously an issue for 3/4 of the season. So what does 2023 look like for Ke'Bryan Hayes?
Hopefully healthy. I don't really have much an answer besides that, but
I mean, yeah,
now we don't have to talk about baseball for a while.
Yeah, so if you're expecting
sounds terrible, but listen, it's a long season, and it's hard to talk about a bad baseball team for this long.
Yeah, like imagine if we had like a playoff game on Friday or something to look forward to when the postseason kicks off. That would be awesome. It'd probably be like the majority of our show. But
Right.
Here we are. We're Pirates fans. We don't get that.
We'll probably see you in like January, Pirates.
I am excited for playoff baseball though, because like in general, I'm not a huge I don't watch a lot of baseball that isn't the Pirates. But playoff baseball is just feels different. As with any sport, watching a playoff game is just different. So, real quick before we move on and transition, who are you rooting for to win the World Series?
Seattle Mariners.
Same. But what I don't like is they're playing Cleveland, right, to kick off? Or no, they're playing the is it Cleveland?
Hold on. We'll figure this out.
MLB. No. Cleveland plays Tampa. Toronto, because I mean, like Toronto's cool too. I feel like I like most of the AL playoff teams.
Like, yeah, the AL ones are fine. As far as the like NL ones go,
no,
like
I want the Padres basically.
Yeah, because Cardinals obviously a no. Phillies, yuck. Philadelphia, New York is a New York team, so yeah, Padres is basically it from the NL. But yeah,
I'm cool with pretty much the AL besides like the Astros and Yankees.
Yeah, I'm going with the Mariners just because my buddy Robbie McCombs, who is the site manager for Vanquish the Foe, who I write about for football recruiting for BYU, he's a big Mariners fan. He's from Washington, so and also I can empathize. Yeah, that's the right word. I can empathize with Mariners fans because it's the same amount of stretch between 2001 to now that 1992 and 2013 was. So
they haven't been to the playoffs since they won 116 games.
Yeah, I can get behind that and get behind a team and a fan base that has struggled for that long, just like we did. So let's go Mariners.
As always, as we transition to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, we will kick it off with Sarge's Steelers notes. Steelers and Jets. The Jets defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers at Acrisure Stadium. Let's roll.
Great.
Robert Saleh is one of the only head coaches I think could put up a good fight with Tomlin in a fist fight. I would take Robert Saleh. I would also say Mike Vrabel's in that, Dan Campbell, and I know Sean McDermott, the Buffalo Bills head coach, has a wrestling background. So that's the group right there. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I mean,
that's the group right there. Second play in, and we have a middle of the field throw. I can't believe it. First drive. I'm trying to remember the play.
I can't remember the play to save my life.
Yeah, honestly, I don't. So
Mitch came out, so I don't remember what happened before that.
I know there were points on the first drive, but there weren't points on the first drive, but got some first downs and chewed some clock. This is progress.
Well, I got some news for you, Sarge, and I'm sure his notes changed, but got some news for you.
I'm not in the Deontay drops in camp, but this is back-to-back weeks with pretty big drops from him. Yeah, so this one led directly to an interception. Now, it's just weird because it looked like he wasn't even anticipating that he could potentially get the ball. Like he flashed his hand so late on that route. But yeah, I mean, it is. You can't be making those kind of mistakes with the regularity now that he has in back-to-back weeks, with the money that he's making and them making that commitment to him and what he's supposed to be for this team. So I have all the faith in the world in him, but yeah, he definitely needs to clean that up. And I am also of the mindset that he will.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's too talented not to. I just think it's been a rough couple of games, but I'm not really worried about it. I did tweet out Deontay drop son just as a meme, but I don't actually think he's drop riddled again.
Why does it seem like the Steelers are only allowed to have 3 good drives a game? So this is interesting to read back, right? Because it's like a progression. He's typing these things as they happen. Because I'm
Yeah,
assuming this had to be before half.
I would
Because
think so.
obviously, yeah, you look at what happened when they did make the quarterback switch, and that's going to be something that we talk about in depth later. So I don't want to get into it now. But yeah, I will agree with what we saw in the first 3.5 games with that statement.
Yeah, I would too.
Derek Watt might have more snaps today than he had all of last year. That would not be hard to beat. On TV, was he noticeable? Because
He
at
was.
the game, okay, I was just say at the game, I'm not gonna lie, like I don't recall really seeing much of Derek Watt.
No, I actually noticed like I formation and him being in the backfield.
Okay, good. I will say, just so we're all on the same page here, I have not watched this game back. It was the first one I haven't watched back. So, this offense is kind of laughably bad at this point. Again, it's pretty funny to like read this in a progressional state.
It's probably like right before halftime.
Yeah, we're getting close here. We're getting close here. But it was, and there were still definitely some low lights when Kenny came in, but he's going to be able to mask some of these things, and we're going to talk about that. Right. I have witnessed 4 different plays where they have Cam in an arm bar and no holding has been called. Holding is always something that is going to upset whatever team is on defense because it happens on every single play. And I don't know how they decide when to call it. It has to be incredibly like, what's the word I'm looking for? Noticeable, I guess. Like there has to be flamboyant or
part of me also thinks that a referee is going to decide before the play what defensive player they're going to be watching that's rushing the line. And if that player doesn't get held, they're not going to throw the flag. But if he does, he's going to throw a flag. Because if you have like 5 guys rushing the quarterback, unless it's like very blatant, unless you're staring directly at it, a lot of it's happening so fast, you're probably not even going to notice.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because if TJ Watt's on the field, you'd think they'd just be watching him the entire time.
Right. But he's also probably, you could also get a circumstance where it's like kind of like the Ben Roethlisberger or Cam Newton sort of thing when it comes to protecting the quarterback against penalties. Like they're so big, so they don't get the same benefit of the doubt of someone like Tom Brady. Maybe like TJ Watt, it's like, oh, well, he's like the best pass rusher in the league. We're not going to watch him. Like he can deal with it.
Why put Kenny in if you're going to run 3 straight plays? So this to me is them kind of like, for lack of better terms here, breaking the seal. Like it didn't surprise me the way that it started out.
Breaking the seal.
Like, yeah, you're kind of getting his feet wet. You're putting him on the field for the first time. And that is maybe a little bit of a disservice to him, the fact that he hadn't taken any QB1 reps up to that point.
Well, didn't they run it 4 times in a row because the next play was a QB
one of those. Yeah, he was one of those running plays.
Yeah, from their own 35 or whatever, 30.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's ironic that the Steelers didn't utilize the middle of the field while also getting torched there. Yeah, Zach Wilson absolutely lit it up in the middle of the field. He really did nothing to the outside this entire game. If you saw the charts, the way that they looked.
It's like the opposite of Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good at attacking the middle of the field. I'm going to keep saying it. I don't really have an issue with a lot of things that the Steelers are doing from a personnel standpoint, but Robert Spillane being the linebacker on 3rd down is really upsetting to me at this point.
Yeah. I guess is he on every 3rd down? That's something I haven't been noticing.
Yeah. You know what was interesting too? I saw for the first time, they used him as a pass rusher, at least on one play on Sunday.
Like on the outside? Edge.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
They had him, Jack, and Bush all on the field, and he was coming off the line, coming off the end.
I would prefer that more than him being like on the 3rd down.
I would too. Anything to keep him out of coverage. I'm really worried about Mitch's mental health. This team looks night and day different. All right, so I'm about to say something on here once again that I've been told by a source that no one else. I haven't seen anybody report this. So this is
Hashtag
only for the
sources.
people. Only for the people that watch or listen to this show are going to hear this. Keep in mind the player that we were just talking about when I say this as well. There was a altercation in the locker room between two Steelers at halftime on Sunday that led to one player on the Steelers being benched. Part of it was due to performance. Part of it was due to this altercation happening. I'll leave it at that.
So am I just not supposed to like guess? You don't have to answer, but can I just give what I would think?
Yeah.
I mean, I would think it would probably either be Mitch and a wide receiver. That would be my initial reaction because the wide receivers are probably just pissed that he's their quarterback. But yeah, that's what I would think based off that.
Yeah. So this is a very reliable person. I've gotten some information from them in the past.
Is it Kenny Pickett?
But no, it was not Kenny Pickett. But to speak to Mitch's mental health, listen, I mean, he's a professional. Like, we've seen him deal with being a backup in the past multiple times now where a similar situation has happened, whether he goes into the season knowing he's the backup or kind of in Chicago where he's benched. So this isn't like his first rodeo with something like this happening. He seems to, do and say a lot of the right things. There's a reason he was voted a captain. So I think
as far as that goes, like, I feel for the guy. Like, don't get me wrong. We didn't want him to be bad.
He wasn't put in a position to succeed, by the way. And I would definitely stand by that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be honest, I don't know that many quarterbacks in this position would be. But as far as like Mitch goes, like, neither of us wanted him to be bad. I don't think any Steeler fan wanted Mitch to be bad. It's just you feel bad that it happened, but at the end of the day, football is a business, and the profit of business is winning in football. So
I want to say one more thing about this too is I think that it could have worked. And what I mean by that is I go back to the point of saying you can't have Mitch and Canada. I think with the right offensive coordinator, including the same like playmakers they have around, it maybe could have worked, but it was never going to work with Canada and Trubisky together.
For some reason, when you said you can't have Mitch and Canada, I just imagined, I don't know if you've ever seen the video of who is it? Is it what's the Bugs Bunny sawing off like Florida or something? I just imagine Mitch Trubisky sawing off Canada from the United States.
Interceptions on Hail Mary should not count on the stat sheet. I like this one.
I mean,
if you're gonna have him be but like, you should be able to separate that. Like, I know that not everybody's watching every game, so like you look at the box score and just see that he had 3 interceptions. But like, for somebody that was there, somebody that was watching the game, one of those was on a Hail Mary. One of those was tipped by Freiermuth, and it was just a little too low. He was trying to throw it out of bounds. And the other one, Chase Claypool might as well have caught it and handed it to the guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that there was a flat out bad interception by Kenny that day. Like, sure, he probably shouldn't have thrown maybe 1 or 2 of them as far as just throwing the pass themselves. But I don't think any of them were so egregious that it was bad.
Yeah. And finally, Pickett played above average. I think for someone who didn't get first team reps all week, rookie mistakes will happen. They will. And rookie mistakes should happen from rookies. Rookie mistakes should not happen from a 6-year veteran. And I think that's the difference. That's what people are going to be able to look at, and why people are going to be more forgiving when you do see Kenny Pickett make a mistake. Now, we have said about him being the most pro-ready guy, being the best fit in terms of all the college quarterbacks that came out to win you football games right now. But you're also talking about a position with the largest learning curve possible going from one level to the next. It's going to take time until he's fully comfortable playing quarterback at the NFL level and being able to read defenses and being able to do things at the line of scrimmage. It's going to take time. But I would rather start that clock right now, and I'm glad that the Steelers are doing so.
Well, that clock is started, and not just in he got to play, but in some of Kenny's comments post game, something that we had talked about that we thought that Kenny would bring differently than Mitch Trubisky is not just the confidence in the quarterback, which we definitely saw in some of those throws, but also we thought that pre-snap he would make better reads than Mitch was doing, and he would also make better reads while the play is going on. And in some of the comments that Kenny had after the game, he was talking about like what the defenses were giving him. And so even in game one, unprepared Kenny Pickett is already reading defenses at the NFL level. I'm not saying he's Peyton Manning, but it's a step in the right direction from a guy that just played a half of football for the first time in the NFL. I like that was said, and I like what I saw from Kenny. I think that from here on out, I mean, these next 13 games is going to be him progressing, because sure, he was the most ready quarterback to come in and step into a starting role, but that's still a big learning curve, and it's still a big transition to come from college to the NFL. So sure, we're going to get a lot of bumps and bruises along the way in terms of rookie mistakes from Kenny, but I am willing to live with those as long as he's a starting quarterback the rest of the way. I'm perfectly fine having the hiccups during the games, knowing that we have our guy in there getting those reps and getting that experience.
So for me, like, I look at the way that this quarterback situation was handled, and we were both kind of on the same page with, we knew it was going to be Trubisky. Like, if it was Pickett, I think we would have both been okay with that. But like Trubisky, we felt like was going to be the starter, and he didn't necessarily do anything in the preseason to lose that spot. I was okay with everything that they had done along the way up until it not being Pickett after the Cleveland game.
Yeah.
I thought he should have started the Jets game. They should have given him the 10 days to get ready for the Jets game and put him in to start that game and get him ready for the gauntlet that lied ahead. I'm not like a big one of those people that are like, oh, you know, they're 4-0 if Kenny Pickett's the starter the whole way or something like that. But I think that if he starts the Jets game, there's a good chance that they win that football game based off how he looked in the second half. So that was really, to me, the first decision of Tomlin's in terms of the way that he handled the quarterbacks that I didn't agree with, was keeping Trubisky as the starter going into the Jets week. Now, I do have to give him credit for pulling the plug and making the switch at halftime. Not everybody is going to be willing to do that in game like that. But I think that we all saw the spark that it ignited. And when you look at, I actually have a couple plays saved here to bring up, but the one I want to show first, I think, is the one that's probably going around the most. And it's a play where, shout out to Tyler Wise. So it's not the exact same look by any means from what Trubisky did in a similar scenario and what Pickett did in a similar scenario. But it's to show Pickett's willingness to keep his eyes down the field and take a hit and make a play, as opposed to the way that Trubisky would just basically hold on to the football, realize he's going to take a sack, and go down. Watch this play from Kenny Pickett.
Pittsburgh territory, and ever since that play, the energy has completely shifted.
Pickett throwing, got his man inside the 5-yard line to about the 2, and that's Freiermuth again.
And also look at his reaction after the play.
Yeah.
So both of those things together, to me, are things that we just haven't seen from Mitch Trubisky up until this point. Kenny Pickett just, he came in the second half. He brought a different swagger. He was moving the offense down the field. And guess what he followed up that play with?
Good height matchup on DJ Reed.
Pickett looking for the end zone. He got there. Touchdown, Steelers.
His second rushing touchdown of the day, where he goes through C.J. Mosley, a linebacker, goes through C.J. Mosley to score his second rushing touchdown of the day. He just adds a different element for this offense. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies throughout this entire process, but he's going to be able to do different things for this offense. And like I said, mask some of the things that like we think Matt Canada is dragging them down on. There were a lot of times where we would go back and say, we know that Matt Canada is not a good offensive coordinator, but there are plenty of times where there's plays to be made and the quarterback's not making it. Kenny Pickett's going to make some of those.
Yeah, the tweet that you were referring to, I thought was just a perfect example of what I was talking about when I just thought Kenny Pickett, at the very least, is going to give you a more confident passer whenever he's in there. Because you saw on basically kind of the same type of plays, in which if you're looking at the two plays, I think that Mitch even had a little bit better of a pocket because, I mean, Quentin Williams. Quentin Nelson.
Yeah.
Quentin Williams. Sorry, I confused the one from the Colts. He's coming right at Kenny, but Mitch had a little bit more of a pocket and still took the sack. I think that shows perfectly what I was talking about whenever I thought Kenny was going to be the more confident quarterback, and he brought it to the entire offense as a whole, not just the quarterback position. And that makes me want to ask you, because I noticed it on TV, as I'm sure as everybody else on TV, like the instant difference in the feel of the game, at least from the offense's perspective, as soon as Kenny was on the field with them. Watching the game on TV, you could tell instantly this offense was way more confident in everything that they were doing. Now, as someone that was at the game and watching it and was able to experience that field personally, what was it like whenever Kenny came in, first off in the standpoint, and then watching him run the offense?
Yeah, I'm like getting chills thinking about the moment of him coming onto the field. Like those Kenny chants. We had already gotten a little taste of what those Kenny chants were going to be like when people wanted him to come in and replace Mitch. But when they actually saw him come onto the field, I mean, it was a whole different thing. And unfortunately, Christian was getting food and missed it. But yeah, go figure, right? But it was definitely a moment. So it's like, even in loss, it was so cool to be there for that, to see his first couple touchdowns. But watching the way that the offense moved the ball, and it's like, that's what made it feel, despite losing the game, it just feels so different. Like you feel a little bit of like a rejuvenation, like let's get this next era started. But just speaking from the way that the offense looked in the game, it was so different. There was more confidence from everybody. Like everybody was exuding confidence. When your playmakers are making plays and reacting the way that they were, we finally got George Pickens going. That is what needs to happen for this offense to be able to stretch the field. Like, I know Deontay Johnson had a pretty quiet day, just 2 catches for 11 yards. Chase Claypool didn't have a catch in this game. But you got Pat Freiermuth going, you got George Pickens going, and those are the 2 guys that we were kind of talking about, like, we think they're going to be the big beneficiaries when Kenny Pickett does take over. A while back, I know that you'll remember this, but I don't know if people watching or listening will. I really felt like, due to skill set, we could see Deontay Johnson kind of be like his Jordan Addison at Pitt. But just from like first glance and watching this game, I don't want to make, long-term observations off one game, but it really felt like there was an emphasis on those 2 players, Pickens and Freiermuth. Now, maybe it was because Pickens hasn't been involved up to this point, and Tomlin was kind of like, hey, you're going in. Can we get this guy more involved? Because he hasn't been yet. Maybe there was just an extra emphasis on doing so. But, I mean, when you got this guy making plays, I got a Pickens play here as well that I'll pull up.
Pickett throwing outside, caught. George Pickens. Pickett to Pickens for a first down.
This is beautiful all the way around. First to throw. Man to man, you've got a size mismatch inside, and then look at the ball play.
But that's like, you see a quarterback being able to understand what he has out there and take advantage of that mismatch. I don't think that like Mitch was willing to test that in that situation. Like, if he doesn't have a window, there's not much of a window for Kenny to throw to there. He's just expecting his guy to make a play. If Mitch didn't have a window, he wasn't willing to take that shot. And that's the difference.
I think that's spot on. I think that Kenny is going to put the ball in a place that his guy can make a play on it and not have to make an acrobatic play like Pickens did in the Cleveland game, which by far, I mean, that was a great catch. But as far as ball placement goes, I think that Kenny is going to be willing to throw into those tighter windows and let his wide receivers do what they do. Now, as far as Pat Freiermuth goes, I think this is great for him just because now the middle of the field is going to be open for season because they're not going to be afraid to throw to the middle of the field, or at least Kenny's not going to be afraid to throw to the middle of the field because we've seen the whole time, like, people were running over the middle, and including on that tweet that you compared the 2 plays with Kenny and Mitch. I believe it was Pickens was over the middle, like wide open,
right. Yeah.
Wide open right over the middle. But Mitch just didn't look at him, and he didn't throw the ball. I think that Freiermuth is going to get that because a lot of Freiermuth's routes go over the middle, so he's going to be a big beneficiary. And whether it was Pickens was going to get targeted more by like Tomlin saying so, or just they have some sort of connection, I think it's great to open him up because he has a skill set that I feel like he is what, or at least he displayed some talent of what we thought Chase Claypool could be as far as an outside receiver goes. And Chase Claypool has been a big disappointment. I mean, 0 catches on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the one that I'm not going to say he should have caught the ball, but he didn't high point the ball and it got intercepted.
Yeah, he short arms it. I mean, I just don't understand like what has happened with him. How has he regressed to this point from what we saw at Notre Dame, even his rookie year?
He's Canadian. That's why.
Canada
Doesn't know football.
You might be onto something. But okay, I want to real quickly before we move on from the Steelers and have them take up the entire show, talk about the defense because they give up 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to the Jets. That's why they lost this football game. Say what you want about Pickett turning the ball over, even though we mentioned what we did about the interceptions. You can't put all the blame on Kenny for those interceptions. But this defense is supposed to be a defense that you can rely on. I understand they don't have TJ Watt right now, but you're also talking about, the New York Jets offense isn't one that's necessarily feared around the league. And they were also missing 3 tackles. So for the Steelers to give up 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to lose this football game, I think disappointing is an understatement.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the difference is in the first 3 quarters of the game, the Steelers pretty much, at least for the most part, neutralized the Jets in the run game. They let up some runs to Breece Hall, but they weren't getting killed by the run game, which was nice to see based off of what we had seen the previous week in Cleveland. Yeah. Now, the difference was, I think that instead of whimpering down and being one-dimensional, like they didn't continue. The Jets didn't continue to try to run the ball in the fourth quarter. They just said, "Screw it." I mean, we've got our quarterback. We're just going to go out there and throw the ball, and that's what they did. I mean, Zach Wilson was 11 for 13 in the fourth quarter. I think that the defense, and granted, that Freiermuth interception, it didn't put the Steelers, or not the Freiermuth interception. It was a ball to Freiermuth. All to Freiermuth that got intercepted. It put the defense in a bad spot. But I would think that, or you would hope for the defense to perform better in the fourth quarter as a whole, because at that point they were one-dimensional in a sense that they weren't running the ball. They were just going to throw it, and the Steelers defense couldn't stop it.
Middle of the field. We already talked about it, but they were just attacking the middle of the field with ease against the Steelers on Sunday. That is what they're going to have to figure out. The issue is going to be, I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen what the injury report looks like for the Steelers here to start the week. We don't know how many of these guys are going to be able to go, but you're looking at Terrell Edmonds, who's in the concussion protocol. I think that he's probably on the more questionable side of questionable at this point. Minka Fitzpatrick dealing with a knee. He didn't practice. Now, Wednesday would be the day if you're going to miss practice that is the case. Cam Hayward got banged up in this game. Akella Witherspoon's been pretty much all but rolled out for a second straight game already by Mike Tomlin. Cam Sutton's been dealing with a groin injury. I mean, you're literally talking, and Levi Wallace was limited as well. You're talking about the entire secondary besides Arthur Millette that didn't practice or was limited on Wednesday, and then Cam Hayward as well. So the defensive side of the ball is very banged up right now, and they haven't been great to begin with. So,
the secondary, especially when we're going into a week with facing the Bills and Josh Allen, you might get lit up if you're not healthy.
So let's talk about that. They got they're going to Buffalo Sunday to play the Bills, where the Bills are seeking a little bit of a revenge on the Steelers after the Steelers went up there and won in week 1 last year and kind of spoiled.
I can't believe the Steelers won that game. I know it was over.
One of the greatest mysteries of the 2021 season.
No idea how they won that game.
But all right, so like, what are our expectations for this? It's hard to say because we don't know.
I mean,
how
you're
many
a 14-point dog too.
Yeah,
like,
we don't know how many pieces of the defense are going to be healthy. I'm very excited to see what Kenny Pickett is going to do. If you look at Buffalo's injury report, that's a laundry list compared to the Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, again,
they've got a lot that they're dealing with too.
It's just very hard to Go ahead.
It's I was gonna say it just sucks that the two people aren't on the list. And granted, I don't want to make this sound like I want anybody injured, but out of all the people that are on their list, it couldn't have been one of either Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs. Like, I'm just saying,
no, they're good.
It couldn't have been one of those two.
I will say I do think, assuming that the pieces of the defense that I think have a chance to play, say that they play, don't know what the Bills situation is going to look like. I do think the Steelers cover 14 points. I think they lose this game, but I think it's going to be something in the range of like 27-17, something like that.
Do you think it's the defense holding them, or do you think it's Kenny Two Gloves keeping them within the covering?
I think Kenny will play okay. I expect him to take better care of the football. But I don't think that he's just going to come in and light it up immediately against a really good Bills defense.
Right. I wouldn't expect that either. But he's definitely going to benefit from getting a full week of practice with the ones and actually knowing that he's going to play in the game and start the game.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, maybe I put too much stock into body language and confidence and stuff. But like you saw him running drills, they would throw it back to him. He's just one-handing the ball at the end of the drill. Like, yeah. There's just something about him. Like it really is just that stuff that you can't teach.
He has the it factor.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
It's got to translate to the football field as well. But everything about him just exudes confidence and those leadership qualities. So I think the early returns are looking very good there. What do you think as far as the game, though? I assume you got Buffalo winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're crazy if you think the Steelers are going to win this game.
I do have some money on it, though, because the Steelers are plus 600. Like, you give me plus 600 on Central Valley to beat the Bills, and I'll probably take it.
Okay. I mean, honestly, the odds would be probably like plus $1 million.
I know. Yeah.
So you got to take it. If you ever get a plus 1 million odds, you got to take it.
Absolutely.
I think that the Steelers are going to like definitely lose the game, but I think that the defense is still solid from Buffalo, but I think they have enough injuries where and I think that Kenny's going to be smarter and more prepared that we actually might see some competent offense for a full game. I'm not going to say that they're going to be on the Bills level of offense or the Kansas City Chiefs level of offense, but I think that we might be able to actually see some like sustained drives more so and some actually good plays being run. And a lot of that just runs through Kenny and the confidence that we have of him being the quarterback and the confidence that he has in the game. Now, as far as like, will they cover? I think they cover. I mean, in the NFL, 14 points is a lot to put on a team. I feel like even a bad team, I think 14 points is a lot to ask somebody to cover. So I'd say like, even if the Bills, like, I think a 10 to 11 point win is very reasonable. So yeah, I think the Steelers will cover, but I don't think they're going to win by any means. But I think even in a loss, the one thing I'm looking for is that the offense just looks like way more competent throughout the entire game instead of just a half or two.
You know what I will say, though? I think one of the big differences too, I mean, there was a lot of differences with the offense. Third down. The third down offense. I think they were 4 for 5 with Pickett.
Also, QB sneaks. I love QB sneaks. They're one of the smartest plays in football, and people don't use it more. I understand you don't want to get your quarterback hurt, but they have like a 90+% of like positivity rate of actually getting either the first down or a touchdown. So I'm happy that we got to see 2 of them with Kenny. One of them was a touchdown, one of them was 4th down in your own 30-yard line. You got both.
Yeah, and then and then the designed run that they had for a touchdown. So not a sneak, but another rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we both got the Steelers losing. I think they're going to play better than I guess the odds makers would have them at. But yeah, it's a tall task ahead. And then they come home. Pickett's first start will be here against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the following week.
Hey, I mean, I hear he's got a little bit on his mind, so maybe he'll be going through it in that game.
Yeah, maybe he retires. Who knows?
Maybe he retires. Who knows? That would be so funny if we convinced Sarge to take the Buccaneers tickets to see Tom Brady in person to go to the game with you, and then the week before the game he retires.
He'd still get to see Pickett's first start, though.
He would. I think that
turn for introductions that week.
I think that the Sarge's notes for that game will be interesting because they'll actually be at a game instead of watching.
Oh, that's
on TV.
true. Is he going to even have notes?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm sure he will.
All right, let's totally switch gears. We're going to talk about some Pens hockey. By the way, if we're already like 45 minutes into this thing, so obviously it's going to be a bit longer of an episode for you guys, which I know that you guys probably hate. There's probably nobody watching or listening at this point. We're talking to ourselves. But what we're going to do this week in terms of Penguins talk, we're going to go through and tell you, we're going to give some predictions. So last year, I feel like if you listen back, and I did, we did okay on this. Like, I obviously I flopped tremendously with who I thought would lead the team in goals, but redeemed myself by saying that Danton Heinen was going to be the unsung hero / X Factor type player.
There you go.
So overall, decent, but we're going to do that again this year, and we'll watch or listen back and see how close we were at the end of the year.
Just a friendly reminder before we're doing this.
Yes,
he predicted Kasperi Kapanen was going to score 33 goals last year.
Yep.
33. I just wanted to get it out there one more time. Okay.
He came up
to a new season.
He came up just short of that. Nearly missed.
Just short.
So my goals leader, I'm taking a much safer route this year.
Okay.
I'm going Jake Gensel, leads the team in goals. I think he's going to have another 40 plus. I've seen a lot of people like Jesse Marshall and Hunter are throwing around. They think he's about to have like a 50 goal season. So I'm not willing to touch that, but I will say I'll put him in like the 40 range.
Well, this is going to be boring. At least I think the first 3 points are going to be boring because I also have Gensel. I think I picked Brian Rust last year. I said he would have like 34 goals, I think. But Jake proved me wrong again that I should have just picked him. And what did Jake end with last year? It was above 40, right? It was, I believe it was above 40. But the point stands. Jake Gensel has turned into a great goal scorer. And not just because he's on the line with Sidney Crosby, but he's just a great player in general. And last year he had 40 exactly. So I think he's going to grow on top of that. And I think even more so if they have another playmaker, great passer on that line for the rest of the year, Ricard Raquel on the top line as well. That could add a new wrinkle into it.
They spent more time together. I think that's how they're going to open the season.
And I love it. I hope it does great. But yeah, Jake Gensel going to lead the team in goals.
This next one's probably the most boring assists. It's going to be
Sidney
Sid.
Crosby.
I mean, I'm not going to say it. He's going to lead the team in assists.
Unless what? Don't even say it. Actually, I know what you're going to. No, don't say it. I know what you're going to say. It's going to be Sid. I mean, he's on a line with Jake. You throw Ricard in there. You might have some Brian Rust up there as well. The power play. I mean, Sid is too good at the game and too smart to not lead the team in assists.
If he plays like even 65 to 70 games, he'll lead the team in assists.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard at that point.
Points. I'll let you go first.
That makes me think that you're not taking the easy route and just saying Sid, but I am because I still think it's a layup. I think that the Sid is still good enough to lead the team in points. I don't think that any of these young players are going to lead the team in points yet. And Sid's not going to have Sid's going to have something to say about it. He's going to lead the team in assists. I still think Sid is going to score around a 25 to 30 goal mark. So based off of that, I would think that Sid's probably going to be in the point per game race again, and probably in the 80-ish something point range. So yeah, I would put Sid as the points leader.
I'm going Jake. I think this is the year that somebody overtakes Sid. The reason being, I think that Jake just scores that many more goals than Sid, and the assists are going to be a lot closer than we expect.
Okay. Fair enough.
Unsung hero. This is where I think we could start seeing some differences.
The next three categories might be different. So we'll see.
I'm going with a new guy. I'm going to go with Jeff Petrie. And the reason being, I think that we've kind of talked about it already, but I think the biggest problem for the Penguins the last couple of years was the transition game. And you finally have a second guy behind Chris Letang that's going to be able to break the puck out and help with that. And also a big problem for them was they weren't able to find somebody to contribute offensively on the back end other than Chris Letang and Mike Matheson. Mike Matheson's obviously no longer here. So I think that you replace what he was bringing offensively with Jeff Petrie with a more steady presence defensively as well. And obviously place on the right side as opposed to the left side. But I'm really excited for what him and Marcus Patterson are going to do. I think I could have done Marcus Patterson here from what he's doing to bring defensively, but that would have been a little bit boring. So I'm going with Jeff Petrie.
Well, I'm going with his pairing mate.
As soon as I said that, I was like, he might be ready to say it.
Yeah, no, and for proof, I will show the video if you're watching on YouTube. Marcus Patterson is right there.
Yeah.
I think that Marcus Patterson is one of the most underappreciated people on the Penguins, and he has been for a while. And we've talked about that on our show, just because of his size and how he's not the physical, big type of defenseman that I feel like just a lot of fans would like to see. It doesn't mean he's not a good defenseman. He's very good at taking away lanes for people, and he's very good at taking away line rushes, I feel like. And his positioning is just really good, and he's really good at using his stick. I feel like he gets underappreciated. That's why he was probably the one that, even though it was probably most likely that we thought that he was going to be the one traded, people just wanted him traded because they didn't like him also. I think that with that pairing with Jeff Petrie and Marcus Patterson, I think everybody's going to be looking at Jeff Petrie and seeing the offensive flash that he will bring to that second pairing, and won't really notice how good Marcus Patterson is being on the defensive side of it and allowing Jeff Petrie to do the things that he's doing.
I like that. I like that our answers kind of play off of each other. That wasn't an intentional segue, but it worked out well. My X factor, please stay healthy. Jason Zucker. I think when you look at the way the offseason went for the Pens, kind of limited what they have in terms of options for the top six. So they need a healthy Jason Zucker this year. Now, he doesn't need to be, he's never going to be the guy that scores 25 to 30 goals like we thought we were getting when we acquired him. But I think what he is a really steady play driver for this team. And he does a lot of the underlying things well. And when you talk about him playing with Gino and what looks like Brian Rust, I think that that's a line where we talked about this too, is they bring enough of a defensive presence for Gino, because he's not obviously the same player on both ends of the ice that he was in the past. But, you know, Rust, I think, is a bit underrated in that aspect. What's interesting with him is he's kind of, his play's dipped a little bit defensively as his offense has gone up. But I don't think it's necessarily indicative of the player that he is. I think he can still play at a high level in his own end. And Jason Zucker's kind of been an underrated player his entire career in terms of his defense, and they're able to transition the puck well. I really like the way that this top six is set up as long as they stay healthy, but that's always been the big question mark for Jason Zucker. So assuming he stays healthy, I think you're looking at a guy that's really going to bring out the most of Gino and Rust, and is going to make us think Brian Rust doesn't need to be up playing with Crosby and Gensel to succeed. You can drop them down. You can spread out that lineup a little bit more and give your lines a little bit more juice, because that's always been the thing. If Rust is up there playing with Crosby and Gensel, you're kind of top heavy. And I think that Jason Zucker this year is going to be able to alleviate some of that.
So I heard you say the Zucker can drive play on that line. The guy that I'm picking can also, I think, drive play on his line, and I'm picking Danton Heinen. The thing that last year a lot of the Penguins lacked was scoring in the bottom six. And I think that third line with Heinen, Carter, and Kapanen, I think it has potential to be a decently scoring line, but I think that they need somebody to drive the play on that line. And I think that's going to be Danton Heinen. I think that he's going to really give something to that line that they lacked last year, and actually be able to drive play through it. I don't think that you're going to have a just black hole of a bottom six anymore. At least I'm hoping not. I think that maybe even with Kapanen basically realizing what he is as a third line, maybe he played more freely on that line. And then with Carter being what he is, I think that Heinen is a good winger to have on that to really drive the offense and get the scoring on that line going.
I like it. Obviously, that was kind of my guy in a similar category last year. So, my disappointment, this one's tough because I didn't want to just I feel like, and I'm not trying to take away from you if one of these is your answers, but we've talked enough about Jeff Carter. We've talked enough about Brian Dumlin. I'm trying to think of somebody that at least from a statistical standpoint could take a step back and we could look at the end of the year and be like, his play kind of dipped a little bit. And it's going to be interesting because I just talked about this line. I'm going to say Brian Rust. And the reason I'm going to say Brian Rust is I don't think he's going to play as many minutes. And I think you're going to see his production go down a little bit based off what he's also being paid now on that new contract too. Now, he's still being underpaid for what he could have gotten on the open market, sure, but he's making more than he was at a $3.5 million player producing, at a 30-goal pace. So I think when we look at the end of the year with what he's going to put up compared to what he put up in past years, taking into consideration a pay raise, that could be kind of defined as a disappointment in my eyes, the way that I see it.
Yeah, I mean, mine was one of the two guys you mentioned. It's not Jeff Carter, it's Brian Dumlin. And listen, I don't want to keep harping on this guy. Neither of us do. But based off of his play, ever since he had that injury with his ankle against St. Louis a few years ago, he's not the same defenseman. And I don't think that. And I saw a week or two ago that there were contract talks happening, but they weren't getting anything done. I'm like, well, don't get anything done right now. I mean, if he's going to continue to play poorly, you shouldn't give him a new contract. Let this year play out. But I just don't really expect anything to really change much. And I think that's going to be a disappointment for the team because he's at his like that top pairing is at its best whenever Dumlin is playing the way he used to and being that stout defensive defenseman and allowing Chris Letang to use that offensive skill set to do what he does. Now, Chris Letang, despite Dumlin having a down year last year, had a phenomenal season. So Chris Letang is good enough to play despite Dumlin, but the problem is I just feel like Dumlin has continued to regress, and I think that's going to continue into this year. And as far as contract goes, just because I'm bringing it up because I saw that tweet like a week or two ago, like you should not even be thinking about that unless something really changes this season.
I'm not so sure he's one of their 6 best defensemen. When you take in consideration they still have 9 guys here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I wanted them to trade him. This is coming from somebody that, like, when they won those 2 cups, he was my favorite player on the team. I love those unsung heroes. We just gave like picks for unsung heroes for the year. Those are my favorite types of players that just kind of come out of nowhere, do the little things that go unnoticed. Those are the types of players that like I buy the jerseys for. I have a Brian Dumlin jersey, one of my favorite players. But like you mentioned, he has not been the same player for quite some time now. We've seen a pretty steady regression. And it's hard to imagine all of a sudden this year he's going to be back to his form. So I'm with you on that for sure. I think, by the time that we're watching, by the way, 8 days away from the opener at the time of recording this, we're going to quickly feel like he's not one of the best options to be in the lineup, not just on the top pairing, but in the lineup when you look at how many NHL defensive options they have.
Yeah. And I mean, he's only on the top pairing just because Chris Letang's there too. And that's probably who Chris Letang wants. But on what any other team in the NHL is he a top pairing? And any other team in the NHL is he a second pairing? I mean, I'm sure there's some he's probably a second pairing, but he's not a top pairing in any other team.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. Without going through and looking at literally every team's depth chart, I can't imagine that he would be. So it's literally just a comfort level thing for Chris Letang.
Yeah, he is. He's
and how about
he says Chris Kunitz for the top line.
How about this? Them reaching out to all other teams to try to trade POJ. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of goes to what we talked about. Like, if he's not going to be in the lineup and he's not going to be down in Wilkes-Barre, you don't want him to be this New Year's version of Juuso Riikola. So if you're not going to play him, you might as well trade him.
I'm all for trading him, by the way.
If there's any value left. What sucks is you should have decided this a couple years ago if you were going to do this. And I'm sure they didn't know what they were doing. And it's a new ownership group and everything like that. Like, I get it. But the fact that his value was probably a lot higher a couple years ago, especially when he made his NHL debut and had like some really good games to start. If you knew that this was going to happen and you were going to get a log jam at that left side and he's not going to play, which, I mean, even if we didn't make a move on the defensive side, that would still be the case.
Yeah.
I think that they should have just moved on a while ago. So if I agree, I think that they should trade him because I don't want him to use Suricola and just sit in the press box and not do anything. But I mean, it sucks to see like what was going to be the piece from that Phil Kessel trade turning into nothing.
I didn't have him. I couldn't fit him anywhere in these categories, but I'm also really excited to watch Ty Smith. And I wonder how much getting him in that deal from Reno impacted POJ's future. I think the writing was kind of on the wall there that he didn't have a future in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think so too. Because having Ty Smith, granted, he had a few down years in New Jersey, but I mean, who doesn't? He had a great rookie year, and
He's
so
playing with Subban.
Yeah, hoping he can thrive here. And I think that apparently Jan Ruda's impressed in camp with what he's been doing defensively. So you kind of have the straight up just offensive defensive for all of your pairings.
So
And
what we talked about with Petrie and Patterson, I kind of view the Smith Ruda that way, but obviously the opposite sides, like the left-handed as the yeah.
And that's what Dumlin and Letang should be, but we'll see if Dumlin's good at defense this year.
I don't know. Not holding out much hope, to be honest with you. But yeah, I don't know if I have anything. I think that's it. I don't have anything else.
No, I'll just mention the other person I was thinking about for X Factor is just Tristan Jarry. I think you can ride your goalie. A lot of teams can ride a goalie in the NHL, and I think that Tristan Jarry, especially in a contract year, he's got to perform for this team to do what their aspirations are.
Especially when you get to the postseason. Like if I remember we did like a postseason episode. Was it just last year before the playoffs? Or was it the previous year with Jordan and Doug on here? Either way, we did something similar. Okay, we did something similar to this, like who's going to be the X factor throughout the playoffs. I feel like once you get to the playoffs, you can literally just always say the X factor is the goalie. Like that, you can just say that because it is.
I mean, we've seen evidence of it for a couple postseasons that if your goalie is not playing well, it doesn't matter how good the team is in front of you, you're going to lose.
More often than not, teams are not the 2015-16 Penguins.
Yeah.
Where it wouldn't matter who was in net. They were facing like 18 shots a game. Something stupid like that in the playoffs. But I don't have anything else. If you wouldn't mind, because I'm not entirely sure that I would make it through it, if you could read off again the information for the GoFundMes and stuff.
Yeah. So for our personal GoFundMe, for our Christmas fundraiser, Rocking Around the 412. Again, it is the pinned tweet on our Twitter. So just go to Around the 412 on Twitter. It's pinned at the top. You can click on it, read about our mission. Again, it's trying to help raise money to get a bunch of gifts and stuff for kids for Christmases. Smitty and I never really had to worry about where Christmas gifts or Christmas meal was coming from. Not everybody is so lucky. So we've tried to help out for the past few years to doing that. This is year 5. But yeah, go there, go to GoFundMe.com directly and search Rockin' Around the 412 and it'll pop up. And also, if you would like to donate for Isla Keen's future fund, you can go to GoFundMe.com and you can search Isla Keen. Again, that is ISLA KENE' future. It'll pop up and you can help donate and raise some money for her future fund because sadly she lost her dad this past weekend. But we will also retweet that tweet. We've got a couple of retweets for the GoFundMe already on our Twitter. It'll be in the links in the description for this show everywhere you're listening to it and on YouTube. And also we will tweet it out again, and we'll probably tweet it out throughout the weeks to come as well, just trying to get awareness out. It's on Smitty's IG story and Facebook. I mean, pretty much any of our socials, it'll be on there. So,
and briefly to just tie them back together again, Isla is the first person that we've for sure decided we're going to take care of with the Rocking Around the 412 mission. So you guys have seen what we've done with that in the past. You guys have seen the pictures and videos. I'm very grateful and thankful that we're going to be able to provide Christmas for her. So thank you guys in advance for donating to the cause. And I look forward to giving you a bunch of you guys prizes for doing so. I don't have anything else. I can't thank you guys enough for the outpouring of support. You know, so many people reached out to me via Twitter or text after the fact. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. and we'll be back next week where we will give some NHL predictions. Hopefully we're talking about what I would consider one of the bigger upsets in Steelers history if they were to do it on Sunday against Buffalo, and I doubt any baseball. But
True.
until then, for Smitty, for Tyler, this has been Around the 412, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.